Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church in Columbia, South Carolina. We're part of the ELCA. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. Now that I think about it, I guess I considered them to be carpetbaggers. When I moved from a small South Carolina town to serve a church in Myrtle Beach, it seemed to me that we went from a sedate 45 miles per hour to 450 miles per hour. Things weren't southern laid back or relaxed anymore, and moved at a much quicker, more intense pace. The thing was, we had many people in the church who had retired to the beach community from northern states, and for them things seemed incredibly slow. They constantly complained about how slowly things happened compared to how it had been where they left it up north. Eventually, this grew somewhat wearying to those of us who were more southern in nature. We would wonder, if you liked it so much that way, why did you leave it to come here? We were perplexed that people would leave an area to get away from a lifestyle and then try to make the new place just like the old place. Frankly, at times their complaining got so bad that we wanted to send them back. My goal this week is to take you on a journey through the book of Amos. But as we begin, I need to give you a warning. Amos is not a book of joy and delight. Rather, it is a strongly worded book that gets right to the point about how the people were experiencing the blessing of political stability and economic prosperity, but even so, they were complacent about God and their faith. I believe we might easily see parallels to our world, to our country today, and find that Amos's harsh words might well speak to us. Amos doesn't mind stepping on toes, and this week we might find our own toes under his feet. So let's get started, and to do that I need to invite us to reconsider those carpetbaggers after the Civil War, or even those fine folks who had moved to Myrtle Beach with us. As those of us from the South might say, they were from off, and most of the time their insights and opinions weren't welcome. That's where Amos begins. You see, at the time, the kingdom of Israel was split into two nations, Judah in the south and a separate nation called Israel in the north. They knew they were connected and shared their religion and history, but they had their own kings, political systems, and ways of doing things. Then Amos showed up. The thing was, Amos wasn't a prophet or even a priest. He was a part-time shepherd and a part-time arborist. He worked in the fields tending sheep and pruning trees. He wasn't educated or even a professional, and everyone must have wondered at this guy who thought he had a message from God. Even worse, Amos was from Judah, the southern nation, but went into Israel, the northern nation, to preach. Everyone must have wondered again what right this foreign cousin had to come in and tell them what God said. But then Amos started to preach, and his words captured their imagination. Thus says the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Damascus, and for 4, I will not revoke the punishment. Oh, that caught their ears. Damascus was a neighboring enemy. Amos was saying that the people of Damascus had sinned, and sinned some more, and God was going to get them. This was just what they wanted to hear, as God was punishing their enemies. Amos went on like that, pointing out the transgressions of nation after nation around them, and the people were just eating it up. Then Amos said, Thus says the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Judah, and for 4 I will not revoke the punishment. Amos was pointing out the faults of his own nation, and those in Israel were feasting on what they heard. We are God's people, and all those others are wrong, they exulted. Then Amos hit his point. Thus says the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Israel, and for 4 I will not revoke the punishment. Suddenly you could have heard a pin drop. Amos then very pointedly named their sins, being more concerned for profit than for the poor, for their own gain rather than for the good of others, trampling the poor and pushing the afflicted out of their way and making a mockery of their faith. Then Amos described the punishment that was coming, how they would be pressed down and the good things taken away. It was a devastatingly effective sermon, exposing their complacency in faith and how they were not living in ways that accorded with the faith they said they believed in. And I believe this is where we get our own toes stomped on too. You see, when the Bible talks about justice, it's not talking about crime and a judicial system. It's talking about lifting up the poor. It's talking about equity in society, the rich sharing what they have so the poor have more, and about the orphan and widow and refugee and immigrant and outcast and those ignored and overlooked in society, all of them being welcomed, loved, and cared for. When the Bible speaks about justice, that's what it's talking about. And I suspect that we may find these words addressing our own society and our own way of thinking and living. Amos has harsh words for the wealthy and the powerful, and in no uncertain terms calls them out for not living or following the way of God. Amos knows that God's justice is universal, and what's more, cares for all people, especially those on the margins of society. And Amos tells us that we can't live that way. If we live that way, we are rotting away. Spiritually, we are corrupt. My toes are hurting already. Maybe yours are too. Amos wasn't a trained religious professional, but what was worse, he was from off. Even so, maybe we should listen to what he has to say. Thanks for sharing these moments with me, and remember to let this day belong to God.